Ada loved the rhythmic thwack of tennis balls against the concrete court in her backyard. Every day after school, she would spend hours practicing her serves, forehands, and backhands, dreaming of becoming the next Serena Williams. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows, when she heard a loud crash and a muffled cry for help coming from her neighbor Jake's garage. Ada paused, her racket in midair, and listened intently. Another cry for help confirmed her initial suspicion. Without a second thought, she dropped her racket and sprinted towards Jake's garage. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see a pile of boxes had toppled over, trapping Jake underneath. "Mr. Jake," she called out, her voice tinged with urgency. "Are you okay?" Over here, came a strained voice from behind the boxes. "I'm stuck." Ada squeezed through the narrow opening and saw Jake pinned under several heavy boxes. She rushed to his side, pushing and lifting the boxes with all her might until Jake was finally free. He sat up slowly, wincing in pain. "Thank you, Ada," he said, his voice grateful but weak. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." Ada helped him to his feet, noticing the garage was a mess of old sports equipment, dusty trophies, and yellowed newspaper clippings. Her curiosity piqued, but she focused on making sure Jake was all right. "Do you need to see a doctor?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. Jake shook his head. "No, I'll be fine. Just a little bruised." "Thank you again." Ada's gaze lingered on the trophies and equipment scattered around the garage. "You used to play tennis?" Jake followed her gaze and sighed. "Yes, a long time ago. I was a coach, actually. But those days are behind me." Ada's eyes lit up with excitement. "A coach? That's amazing. I've been looking for someone to help me with my game. Could you maybe coach me?" Jake hesitated, the lines on his face deepening with an internal struggle. "I don't know, Ada. I've been out of the game for a long time." "Please, Mr. Jake," Ada pleaded. "I love tennis, and I want to get better. You have all this knowledge and experience. It would mean the world to me." Jake looked at her earnest expression, and for a moment he saw a reflection of his younger self, full of passion and dreams. He sighed, relenting. "All right, Ada. I'll help you. But we take it one step at a time, okay?" Ada's face broke into a wide grin. "Thank you, Mr. Jake. You won't regret this, I promise." As they began to clean up the garage together, Ada couldn't help but ask questions about Jake's past. She learned that he had once been a renowned tennis coach, training several top players before a scandal forced him to retire early. Ada didn't press for details, sensing it was a painful topic for him. Despite the messy garage, there was a palpable sense of hope and new beginnings in the air. Ada felt a thrill of excitement at the thought of being coached by someone with so much experience. Jake, on the other hand, felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. As the last rays of sunlight faded and they finished tidying up, Ada realized it was time to head home. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Jake nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Same time tomorrow." Ada left the garage with a bounce in her step, eager to tell her parents about the unexpected turn of events. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge both her and Jake in ways they couldn't yet imagine. That evening, Ada's excitement was contagious. She could hardly contain herself as she told her parents about Jake agreeing to coach her. Her father frowned slightly, recalling vague rumors about Jake's past, but Ada's enthusiasm softened his skepticism. "We'll see how it goes," he said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "But be careful, Ada." "I will, Dad." "I promise," Ada replied, already planning her next practice session in her mind. As she lay in bed that night, she thought about Jake and the look in his eyes when he talked about tennis. There was something there, a hint of regret, perhaps, but also a glimmer of the passion she felt so strongly within herself. She knew this was the beginning of something special, a chance to learn from someone who had been through the highs and lows of the sport she loved. Jake, meanwhile, sat alone in his garage, looking at the now organized space. The old trophies and equipment brought back memories, some painful, others filled with pride. He wondered if he was making the right decision by coaching Ada. But deep down, he felt a stirring of hope, a chance to redeem himself by helping a young girl achieve her dreams. The next day, as the sun rose over the suburban neighborhood, both Ada and Jake prepared for their first official training session, each filled with anticipation and a renewed sense of purpose. The next afternoon, Ada could barely contain her excitement as she gathered her tennis gear and headed to Jake's house. Her parents had given her cautious approval, reminding her to be careful and respectful. Ada assured them she would, her mind already focused on the upcoming session. As she approached Jake's house, she saw him waiting outside, leaning against the garage door with his arms crossed. He looked a bit apprehensive, but when he saw Ada's enthusiastic wave, a small smile crossed his face. "Ready to get started?" Jake asked as Ada jogged up to him. "Absolutely," Ada replied, her eyes shining with determination. Jake led her to the local tennis court, a short walk from his house. The court was empty, the net slightly sagging, but to Ada, it felt like a grand arena. She could already envision herself hitting powerful serves and running across the court with the agility of her idols. "All right, let's see what you've got," Jake said, handing her a racket. "Show me your serve." Ada nodded, stepping up to the baseline. She bounced the ball a few times, took a deep breath, and served. The ball hit the net and rolled back to her feet. She felt a flush of embarrassment, but Jake's expression remained neutral. "Not bad for a first try," he said. "You've got power, but we need to work on your form. Try again, but this time, focus on your follow-through." Ada tried again and again, each serve improving slightly under Jake's guidance. He showed her how to position her feet, how to grip the racket, and how to follow through with her swing. With each correction, Ada felt herself getting better, her confidence growing. As they continued to practice, Jake's initial reluctance began to fade. He was impressed by Ada's determination and her willingness to learn. She listened intently to his advice, trying her best to implement each suggestion. For the first time in years, Jake felt the thrill of coaching, the joy of seeing a player improve under his guidance. After an hour of intense practice, Jake called for a break. Ada wiped the sweat from her forehead, her breath coming in short, excited bursts. "You're doing great, Ada," Jake said, handing her a water bottle. "You've got the passion and the potential. We just need to refine your technique." Ada beamed, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you, Mr. Jake. I couldn't have done it without your help." They sat on a bench at the edge of the court, watching as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Jake shared stories from his coaching days, tales of triumph and heartbreak, of players who had achieved greatness and those who had faltered. "Why did you stop coaching?" Ada asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. Jake hesitated, the shadows of his past flickering in his eyes. "It's a long story, Ada. Let's just say, sometimes life doesn't go the way you plan." Ada sensed the pain behind his words and decided not to press further. Instead, she changed the subject to lighter topics, discussing her favorite players and matches she had watched on TV. Jake listened, occasionally chiming in with his insights and anecdotes. As the sky turned from orange to deep blue, Jake stood up and stretched. "We should call it a day. You did great for your first session. Same time tomorrow?" "Definitely," Ada replied, packing up her gear. "Thank you, Mr. Jake. I'm really looking forward to learning from you." Jake watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He was proud of Ada's progress and excited about the future, but the weight of his past still lingered, casting a shadow over his thoughts. He wondered if he could truly move forward, or if his past mistakes would continue to haunt him. Back home, Ada's parents noticed a change in her demeanor. She was more energized, more focused. They listened as she recounted her training session, their concerns slowly easing as they saw how much it meant to her. Over the next few days, Ada and Jake settled into a routine. Each afternoon, they would meet at the tennis court, practicing serves, volleys, and footwork. Jake pushed Ada hard, but he also knew when to give her encouragement, helping her build both her skills and her confidence. For Ada, each session was a step closer to her dreams. For Jake, it was a chance to reclaim a part of his life he thought he had lost forever. Together, they began to forge a bond that transcended the court, a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared love for the game. Over the next few weeks, Ada's skills improved significantly. Each day after school, she would rush to the tennis court, eager to learn from Jake. Her serves became more precise, her volleys sharper, and her footwork quicker. The progress was evident, and Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he watched her transform into a promising young player. One afternoon, after an intense practice session, Ada noticed Jake seemed more contemplative than usual. They sat on the bench, sipping water and catching their breath. Ada decided to broach a topic that had been on her mind for a while. "Mr. Jake, you mentioned you used to coach before. Why did you stop?" Ada asked, trying to sound casual. Jake's face darkened slightly, and he took a deep breath. "It's complicated, Ada. Let's just say, not everything went as planned." Ada sensed his reluctance, but couldn't shake her curiosity. She had heard whispers around the neighborhood about Jake's past, and she wanted to understand the man who was now her mentor. "I've heard some people talking. They mentioned something about a scandal." Jake sighed, looking out at the empty court. "It's true. There was a scandal. I was accused of cheating, of fixing matches. It was all lies, but the damage was done. My reputation was ruined, and I had to leave coaching." Ada's eyes widened. "But why would someone do that to you?" "Jealousy, rivalry, who knows?" Jake replied, his voice tinged with bitterness. "I tried to fight it, but it was like swimming against the tide. I lost everything." Ada felt a surge of anger on Jake's behalf. "That's so unfair. You didn't deserve that." Jake smiled weakly. "Life isn't always fair, Ada. But I've learned to live with it. Coaching you has been a second chance for me, and I'm grateful for that." Ada's admiration for Jake grew even more. She resolved to help him clear his name, but for now, she kept that thought to herself. "I'm grateful too, Mr. Jake. You've taught me so much already." Later that evening, Ada couldn't stop thinking about Jake's story. She decided to do some digging on her own. She searched online for articles about Jake's scandal and found several old news reports detailing the accusations and his subsequent fall from grace. The more she read, the more convinced she became that Jake had been set up. At dinner, Ada's parents noticed her preoccupation. "Everything okay, Ada?" her mother asked. Ada hesitated, then decided to share what she had learned. "I've been looking into Mr. Jake's past. He was a great coach, but someone framed him for cheating. It's so unfair." Her father frowned. "Ada, we've talked about this. Be careful. We don't know the whole story." "But Dad, I've read the articles. It's clear someone was out to get him. He deserves a chance to clear his name." Her mother sighed. "We understand, sweetheart. Just promise us you'll be cautious. We don't want you getting hurt or disappointed." "I promise," Ada replied, determined to help Jake in any way she could. The next day, Ada approached Jake with a new sense of purpose. "Mr. Jake, I want to help you clear your name. I've been reading about your case, and it's obvious someone framed you." Jake looked at her with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "Ada, I appreciate your concern, but it's a lot more complicated than it seems. I've made peace with it." "But you shouldn't have to," Ada insisted. "You deserve justice." Jake sighed, seeing the determination in Ada's eyes. "All right, if it means that much to you, we can look into it together. But our main focus will still be your training." Ada nodded eagerly. "Of course, Mr. Jake. I won't let it distract me from tennis." As they continued their sessions, Ada began to notice the whispers around the tennis court. Some parents would pull their children away, casting suspicious glances at Jake. The community's skepticism was palpable, and Ada felt a growing sense of frustration. She knew Jake was a good man and a great coach, and it angered her to see him treated with such distrust. One afternoon, after an especially intense practice, Ada overheard a conversation between two parents. "Can you believe she's training with him?" one of them whispered. "After everything that happened?" "I know," the other replied. "It's just a matter of time before something goes wrong." Ada felt her cheeks flush with anger. She wanted to confront them, but Jake's calm demeanor stopped her. He had overheard them too, but he simply continued packing up their gear, his face expressionless. "Mr. Jake, why do people have to be so cruel?" Ada asked as they walked home. Jake shrugged. "People fear what they don't understand. It's easier to judge than to learn the truth. But we can't let that stop us. We know what we're doing, and that's what matters." Ada nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. She would prove them wrong, and she would help Jake reclaim his rightful place as a respected coach. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, both on and off the court. The weeks flew by, and Ada's skills continued to improve under Jake's careful guidance. Each day brought new challenges and triumphs, pushing her closer to her dream. Their routine became a familiar rhythm: school, tennis practice, and then home to study and rest. Ada's parents, while still cautious, began to see the positive changes in their daughter. She was more focused, disciplined, and driven. Her grades improved as she managed to balance her academic responsibilities with her rigorous training schedule. One afternoon, as Ada and Jake were practicing volleys, Jake called for a break. "You're doing great, Ada. Your reflexes have really sharpened." Ada smiled, wiping sweat from her brow. "Thanks, Mr. Jake. I feel like I'm getting stronger every day." Jake nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "You've got the talent and the determination. Just remember, tennis is as much a mental game as it is a physical one. Stay focused and keep believing in yourself." Ada took his words to heart, but she knew there were still obstacles to overcome. The whispers and suspicious glances from the community hadn't stopped. If anything, they had intensified as she started to participate in local tournaments. At one such tournament, Ada felt the weight of those stares more acutely than ever. As she stepped onto the court, she could hear the murmurs from the crowd. "Isn't she the one coached by that Jake guy? I heard he was involved in a scandal. What's she doing here?" Ada took a deep breath, trying to drown out the noise. She focused on Jake's advice: stay focused, believe in yourself. The match began, and she quickly found her rhythm, her movements fluid and precise. The sound of the ball hitting her racket, the feel of the court under her feet, everything else faded away. Despite the initial nervousness, Ada won the match with confidence. As she shook hands with her opponent, she caught Jake's approving nod from the sidelines. She felt a surge of pride, but also a renewed determination to prove herself, not just for her sake, but for Jake's as well. Later, as they walked home from the tournament, Ada couldn't help but bring up the community's skepticism. "Mr. Jake, how do you handle all the whispers and the judgment? Doesn't it bother you?" Jake sighed, his expression thoughtful. "It used to bother me a lot. But I've learned that what matters most is what we know to be true, not what others think. We can't control their opinions, but we can control our actions." Ada nodded, feeling a bit better. "I just want to prove them wrong, you know? Show them that you're a great coach and that I can be a great player." Jake smiled. "And you will, Ada. Just keep working hard and let your success speak for itself." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Ada found in Jake not just a coach, but a mentor and a friend. They shared stories, dreams, and even fears. Jake opened up more about his past, and Ada shared her aspirations of becoming a professional tennis player, inspired by her idol, Serena Williams. One evening, after a particularly grueling practice, Ada sat with Jake on the court, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. "Mr. Jake, do you think I can really make it? Can I be as good as Serena?" Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Ada, you have the potential to be even greater. But it's not just about talent. It's about hard work, dedication, and heart. You've got all those qualities in spades. Keep pushing yourself, and don't ever give up on your dreams. Ada felt a lump in her throat. Thank you, Mr. Jake. I wouldn't be here without you. Jake smiled, patting her shoulder. And I wouldn't be here without you, Ada. You've given me a second chance, and for that, I'm grateful. As they continued their training, Ada faced her share of setbacks and frustrations. There were days when her serves were off, or she couldn't seem to find her rhythm. But each time, Jake was there, guiding her through the rough patches, encouraging her to keep going. One particularly challenging day, Ada was struggling with her backhand. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get it right. Frustration boiled over, and she slammed her racket on the ground. I can't do it, Mr. Jake. I'll never get it right. Jake walked over, his expression calm. Take a deep breath, Ada. It's okay to be frustrated, but don't let it consume you. Let's take a break and then try again. Ada nodded, taking deep breaths to calm herself. After a few moments, she picked up her racket and tried again, this time with more focus and patience. Slowly but surely, she began to improve. As they wrapped up the session, Jake looked at her with a proud smile. You see, Ada? You can overcome any obstacle if you stay focused and don't give up. Ada smiled back, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Thanks, Mr. Jake. I won't give up. I promise. Together, they continued to push forward, overcoming each challenge and growing stronger both on and off the court. Their journey was far from over, but with each step, they were closer to achieving their dreams. Ada's progress on the tennis court did not go unnoticed. Her consistent victories in local tournaments began to attract attention, not just from other players and their families, but also from the local media. One afternoon, after winning yet another match, Ada noticed a man with a camera and a notepad approaching her. Excuse me, Ada Johnson, the man called out, jogging up to her as she packed her tennis bag. I'm Mr. Thompson from the Atlanta Gazette. I've been following your recent successes. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Ada glanced at Jake, who was standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable. Jake gave a slight nod, indicating it was okay to speak with the reporter. Sure, Mr. Thompson, Ada replied, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. Congratulations on your win today, Mr. Thompson began, scribbling notes. You've been on quite a streak lately. What's your secret? Ada smiled, glancing at Jake. I have a great coach who pushes me to do my best every day. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Yes, your coach, Jake. He has quite a history, doesn't he? A former tennis coach who left the sport under less than ideal circumstances. How did you come to be coached by him? Ada's smile faltered slightly, but she kept her composure. Mr. Jake is an incredible coach. He's taught me so much about the game and about perseverance. I'm very lucky to have him. The reporter's eyes narrowed, sensing a story. Interesting. Are you aware of the allegations that led to his departure from coaching? Ada felt a surge of protectiveness. Yes, I am. But I believe in Mr. Jake. He's not the person those allegations made him out to be. He's dedicated and talented, and I'm grateful for his guidance. Mr. Thompson scribbled furiously in his notebook. Thank you, Ada. Best of luck in your future matches. As the reporter walked away, Ada turned to Jake. I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable, Mr. Jake. Jake shook his head, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You handled it well, Ada. The media can be tough, but you spoke from the heart. That's what matters. Over the next few weeks, the media attention intensified. Articles began to appear, highlighting Ada's achievements but also delving into Jake's past. The scrutiny brought renewed whispers and glances from the community, and Ada found herself increasingly frustrated by the constant judgment. One evening, after a particularly grueling practice, Ada confronted Jake. Mr. Jake, why don't you fight back? Why don't you clear your name? Jake sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. Ada, I tried to fight it back then, but it was like shouting into a storm. No one wanted to listen. Now, it's different. People are starting to see who I really am through you. Ada frowned. But it's not fair. You shouldn't have to live under this shadow. Jake smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Life isn't fair, Ada. But we can't let that stop us. We have to keep moving forward, proving ourselves through our actions. Despite Jake's stoic acceptance, Ada couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be done. The media's interest continued to grow, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the full story of Jake's past came out. During another local tournament, Ada's fears were confirmed. As she walked off the court after another victory, she was approached by a different reporter. This time, the questions were more pointed, more invasive. Ms. Johnson, how do you respond to claims that your coach, Jake, was involved in match fixing? Ada took a deep breath, steadying herself. Mr. Jake is an incredible coach and a good person. I trust him completely. The past is the past, and we're focused on the future. The reporter pressed on. But don't you think his past actions reflect on you and your integrity as a player? Ada felt her temper flare. I think what matters is the present. Mr. Jake is dedicated to helping me succeed, and that's all I care about. As the reporter walked away, Ada felt a mix of frustration and resolve. She knew she had to do something to help Jake clear his name, once and for all. After the tournament, Ada sat with her parents, discussing the growing media attention. I want to help Mr. Jake clear his name, she said firmly. It's not right that he's judged for something he didn't do. Her father looked concerned. Ada, this could get complicated. Are you sure you're ready for that? Ada nodded. Yes, Dad. Mr. Jake has done so much for me. It's time I did something for him. Her parents exchanged a glance and then nodded. All right, her mother said. We'll support you. But be careful, and remember we're here for you. Ada felt a surge of determination. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but with her parents' support and her own resolve, she was ready to face it. Together with Jake, she would uncover the truth and prove his innocence. The weeks following Ada's decision to help Jake clear his name were tense. The media scrutiny continued to build, and the whispers in the community grew louder. Ada remained focused on her training, but the weight of the situation was always in the back of her mind. One night, just as Ada was about to go to bed, her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Can you come over? Something's happened. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly informed her parents and rushed over to Jake's house. The sight that greeted her was unsettling. The front door was slightly ajar, and police lights flashed in the driveway. Mr. Jake. Ada called out, pushing the door open. Jake appeared from the living room, looking shaken but unharmed. I'm okay, Ada. Someone broke in. Ada's eyes widened in shock. Are you sure you're all right? What did they take? Jake shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I'm fine, just some equipment and old documents. But it feels more like a message than a random theft. Officer Williams, a stern but kind-hearted police officer, stepped forward. We're still assessing the situation, Miss Johnson. It appears to be a targeted break-in. Ada felt a surge of anger. Who would do this? We're not sure yet, Officer Williams replied, but given the media attention and Jake's past, it's possible someone wants to intimidate him. Jake sighed. It's not the first time something like this has happened. But it's the first time they've gone this far. Officer Williams looked at Jake with a serious expression. We'll increase patrols in the area and keep an eye on things. But be vigilant, both of you. Ada nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She stayed with Jake for a while, helping him clean up the mess left by the intruders. They found old trophies smashed, papers scattered, and several pieces of tennis equipment missing. As they worked, Ada couldn't help but voice her thoughts. Mr. Jake, do you think this has something to do with the scandal? Jake frowned. Possibly. There are still people out there who believe the lies. And some might not want the truth to come out. Ada clenched her fists. We need to find out who did this and why. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We will, Ada. But we need to be careful. The last thing we want is to provoke whoever is behind this. The next day at school, Ada found it hard to concentrate. Her mind kept drifting back to the break-in and the growing tension surrounding Jake's past. Her friends noticed her distraction, and she finally confided in her best friend, Sarah. Someone broke into Jake's house last night, Ada whispered during lunch. I think it's connected to his past. Sarah's eyes widened. That's scary. Do you think he's in danger? I don't know, Ada replied, but I'm going to find out. Jake deserves to have his name cleared. Sarah nodded in support. Be careful, Ada. You're dealing with some serious stuff. That evening, Ada decided to take matters into her own hands. She began researching more about the scandal, looking for any clues that might point to the real culprit. She pored over old articles, interviews, and even reached out to some of Jake's former colleagues. One name kept coming up, Mr. Thompson, the reporter who had been digging into Jake's past. Ada remembered their earlier encounters and the pointed questions he had asked. She decided to pay him a visit. Ada found Mr. Thompson's office in downtown Atlanta. Gathering her courage, she walked in and introduced herself. Mr. Thompson, I'm Ada Johnson. We spoke at a few of my tournaments. Mr. Thompson looked up from his desk, his expression curious. Ah, yes, Ada. What can I do for you? I need to know the truth about Mr. Jake's past, Ada said firmly. And I think you might have some answers. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying her. Why are you so interested in this? Because he's my coach and my friend, Ada replied. And I believe he was set up. Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed. You're a determined young woman, Ada. But uncovering the truth can be dangerous. Are you prepared for that? Ada nodded without hesitation. Yes. I need to clear his name. Mr. Thompson sighed. All right. I've been investigating this for years. I believe Jake was framed by someone who had a lot to lose if he succeeded. But proving it is another matter. Ada felt a surge of hope. Can you help me? Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. I can. But you need to be ready for what we might find. This won't be easy, Ada. I'm ready, Ada replied, determination blazing in her eyes. As Ada left the office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was one step closer to uncovering the truth and helping Jake reclaim his rightful place. The road ahead was uncertain, but with allies like Mr. Thompson and Officer Williams, she knew they had a fighting chance. Ada's determination only grew stronger after her meeting with Mr. Thompson. She knew the path ahead was fraught with challenges, but she was ready to face them. With renewed vigor, she dove deeper into her research, combing through old newspaper clippings, interview transcripts, and any information she could find about Jake's past. One afternoon, Ada sat in the library, surrounded by stacks of documents. Her eyes scanned the pages, looking for anything that stood out. As she read through an old interview with a former player coached by Jake, she noticed a peculiar detail. The player mentioned a rival coach who seemed to have a personal vendetta against Jake. Ada's heart raced as she jotted down the name, Coach Warren. She quickly searched for more information about him and discovered that Coach Warren had been a prominent figure in the tennis world during the time of Jake's scandal. There were rumors of unethical behavior and fierce competitiveness. Ada decided it was time to confront Mr. Thompson again, this time with her new findings. She arranged a meeting and walked into his office with a sense of purpose. Mr. Thompson, I found something, Ada said, placing the documents on his desk. A player mentioned a rival coach, Coach Warren. I think he might be the one who framed Mr. Jake. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow and examined the documents. Interesting. Coach Warren. I remember hearing about him. He had a reputation for being ruthless. Ada leaned forward, her eyes bright with determination. We need to find out more about him. If we can prove he was behind the scandal, we can clear Mr. Jake's name. Mr. Thompson nodded. I agree. This could be the breakthrough we need. I'll dig into Coach Warren's background and see what I can find. Over the next few days, Mr. Thompson worked tirelessly, using his contacts and resources to uncover more about Coach Warren. He found evidence of shady dealings, bribes, and a history of framing other coaches and players to climb the ranks. One evening, Mr. Thompson called Ada with promising news. Ada, I've found something. Coach Warren had a close associate, a man named Stephen. Stephen was known to handle the dirty work. I think if we can get him to talk, we can get the proof we need. Ada felt a surge of hope. How do we find him? I have a contact who can help us locate him, Mr. Thompson replied. But it won't be easy. Are you still willing to go through with this? Ada didn't hesitate. Yes. Whatever it takes. Mr. Thompson's contact managed to track down Stephen, who was now living in a small town a few hours away. Ada and Mr. Thompson made the trip, feeling the weight of their mission. They found Stephen in a dingy bar, nursing a drink. Mr. Thompson approached him cautiously. Stephen, we need to talk. Stephen looked up, his eyes wary. Who are you? I'm a reporter, and this is Ada Johnson. We're here about Coach Warren and the scandal involving Jake. Stephen's expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Ada stepped forward, her voice steady. Please, Stephen. We know Coach Warren used you to frame Mr. Jake. He's lost everything because of it. We just want the truth. Stephen hesitated, glancing around the bar. Why should I help you? Because it's the right thing to do, Ada replied. Mr. Jake is a good man. He deserves justice. Stephen sighed, rubbing his temples. All right, fine. But you didn't hear this from me. Warren paid me to plant false evidence. He wanted Jake out of the picture because Jake's players were winning too much. Ada's heart pounded as she listened to Stephen's confession. Can you give us proof? Something we can use to clear Mr. Jake's name? Stephen nodded slowly. I have some documents at my place. Follow me. They followed Stephen to his small apartment, where he produced a folder filled with incriminating evidence. Ada and Mr. Thompson exchanged a look of triumph. This was it, the proof they needed. Back in Atlanta, they presented the evidence to Officer Williams, who was stunned by their findings. This changes everything. We can reopen the case and clear Jake's name. Ada felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Thank you, Officer Williams. Officer Williams smiled. You did all the hard work, Ada. You and Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure justice is served. When Ada told Jake about their discovery, he was overwhelmed with emotion. I can't believe it. After all these years. Ada hugged him tightly. We did it, Mr. Jake. We're going to clear your name. The news spread quickly, and the community's perception began to shift. Articles were published, highlighting the truth and exonerating Jake. People who once judged him now saw him as a victim of a cruel scheme. As they prepared for the upcoming tournament, Ada felt a renewed sense of purpose. Not only was she playing for herself, but she was also playing for Jake, to honor his name and legacy. The day of Ada's biggest tournament had finally arrived. The sun was shining brightly over the tennis courts, and the stands were filled with spectators. Ada felt a mixture of excitement and nerves as she laced up her shoes and prepared for the match. Jake stood by her side, his presence calming her. Remember, Ada, stay focused on your game. Don't let anything distract you. Ada nodded, taking a deep breath. I won't, Mr. Jake. Thank you for everything. As Ada stepped onto the court, she felt the weight of the moment. This match was more than just a game, it was a chance to prove herself and to honor Jake. She glanced at the stands, spotting her parents, Mr. Thompson, and Officer Williams. Their supportive faces gave her strength. The match began, and Ada quickly found her rhythm. Her serves were powerful, her volleys precise. She moved with confidence, every stroke of the racket a testament to the hours of training she had put in. The first set flew by, and Ada won it convincingly. During the break, Jake handed her a water bottle. "You're doing great, Ada. Keep it up." Ada smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "Thanks, Mr. Jake." As the second set began, Ada's opponent seemed more determined. The rallies grew longer, the points harder to win. Ada felt the pressure mounting, but she reminded herself to stay focused and believe in her abilities. Halfway through the second set, Ada noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Mr. Thompson. He was talking animatedly to a man Ada didn't recognize. She shook off the distraction and refocused on the match, but the tension in the air was palpable. Suddenly, the man with Mr. Thompson stepped forward and called out, "Stop the match." The referee blew the whistle, and the game came to an abrupt halt. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Ada looked at Jake, who was frowning, clearly unsettled. The man stepped onto the court, holding a folder. "My name is Steven, and I have evidence that exonerates Jake from the cheating scandal. This match should not continue under these false pretenses." Gasps and murmurs spread through the audience. The referee took the folder and began to examine the documents. Ada felt her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. After a few tense minutes, the referee nodded and handed the documents back to Steven. "Ladies and gentlemen," the referee announced, "it appears we have new evidence that clears Jake of any wrongdoing. The match will resume, and Jake is hereby reinstated as a respected coach." The crowd erupted in applause, and Ada felt tears of joy streaming down her face. She looked at Jake, who was visibly moved. "We did it, Mr. Jake. Your name is cleared." Jake hugged Ada tightly. "Thank you, Ada. I couldn't have done this without you." The match resumed, and Ada felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every swing of the racket, every step she took was filled with determination. She fought hard, giving it her all. The second set was a battle, but Ada emerged victorious. As she stood on the court, holding the winner's trophy, she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She had won the match, but more importantly, she had helped clear Jake's name. After the ceremony, reporters swarmed Ada and Jake, eager to hear their story. Ada spoke confidently, praising Jake for his guidance and support. Jake, in turn, expressed his gratitude for Ada's unwavering belief in him. Mr. Thompson and Officer Williams approached them, smiles on their faces. "Congratulations, Ada," Mr. Thompson said. "You've done something incredible here." Officer Williams nodded. "You've shown us all the power of truth and determination. Well done." Ada beamed, feeling the pride and admiration of those around her. She knew this was just the beginning of her journey, but she was ready for whatever came next. That evening, as they celebrated at Ada's house, her parents couldn't have been prouder. "You've grown so much, Ada," her mother said. "We're so proud of you." Her father nodded in agreement. "You've not only become a great player, but you've also shown immense courage and integrity." Ada smiled, feeling the warmth of her family's love. She glanced at Jake, who was quietly reflecting on the day's events. "Mr. Jake," she said, "thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." Jake shook his head. "No, Ada. You did this. You believed in yourself and in me. You've shown what true strength and determination look like." As the night wore on, Ada thought about the future. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but with Jake by her side and the support of her family and friends, she felt ready to face anything. Together, they had achieved something remarkable, and Ada knew that this was just the beginning of her journey to greatness. The days following Ada's triumphant match were filled with celebration and newfound recognition. The truth about Jake's past had finally been revealed, and the community began to see him in a new light. The story of Ada's perseverance and Jake's redemption spread, inspiring many. One evening, as Ada and her family sat in their living room, they received a call from a prestigious tennis academy. The academy had heard about Ada's recent success and was interested in offering her a scholarship. Ada's parents were overjoyed, and Ada felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Do you really think I'm ready for this?" Ada asked Jake when she told him the news. Jake smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. "Ada, you've shown more dedication and resilience than many professional players. This is just the next step in your journey. You'll do great." With Jake's encouragement, Ada accepted the scholarship and began preparing for her move to the academy. Her parents helped her pack, their hearts swelling with pride and a bit of sadness at seeing their daughter take this big step. The day before her departure, Ada and Jake decided to visit the local tennis court one last time. As they practiced, Jake shared final pieces of advice and wisdom, ensuring Ada felt confident and prepared. "Remember, Ada," Jake said, "tennis is more than just a game. It's about passion, discipline, and heart. You've got all of that in spades. Trust yourself and keep pushing forward." Ada nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. "I will, Mr. Jake. Thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." As they finished their practice, Ada noticed a group of younger kids watching from the sidelines. She walked over to them, smiling. "Do you want to play?" The kids' eyes lit up, and they eagerly accepted her offer. Ada spent the next hour teaching them basic techniques and sharing her love for the game. Jake watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. He saw in Ada not just a talented player, but a future mentor and role model. Later that evening, Ada's family and friends gathered at their house for a farewell dinner. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, stories, and heartfelt goodbyes. Mr. Thompson and Officer Williams also attended, expressing their admiration for Ada's journey and Jake's vindication. "We're going to miss you, Ada," Sarah said, giving her a tight hug. "But I know you're going to do amazing things." Ada smiled, feeling the warmth of her friend's support. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll keep in touch and visit whenever I can." As the night wound down, Ada found a quiet moment to speak with Jake. "Mr. Jake, I want you to promise me something." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I want you to keep coaching," Ada said firmly. "There are so many kids out there who could benefit from your guidance. You have so much to offer." Jake nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I will, Ada. You've inspired me to believe in myself again. I won't let that go to waste." The next morning, Ada stood on the front porch of her house, her bags packed and ready for the move to the academy. Her parents hugged her tightly, their eyes misty with tears. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," her mother said. "Go out there and show them what you're made of." Ada nodded, feeling a surge of emotion. "I will, Mom. I promise." Jake arrived to see her off, giving her one last piece of advice. "Remember, Ada, this is just the beginning. Keep your head up, stay focused, and never forget why you started playing tennis in the first place." Ada hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Jake, for everything." As Ada drove away, she looked back at her house and the familiar faces waving goodbye. She felt a mixture of sadness and excitement, knowing she was leaving behind a part of her life, but also stepping into a new and promising future. At the academy, Ada quickly settled into her new routine. The training was intense and the competition fierce, but she thrived on the challenge. She made new friends and continued to grow as a player, always keeping Jake's teachings close to her heart. Back in Atlanta, Jake reopened his tennis academy, dedicating it to fostering young talent and providing opportunities for those who might not have access to professional coaching. The community's perception of him had shifted, and many parents eagerly enrolled their children in his program. Ada's journey was far from over, but she felt confident and prepared for whatever lay ahead. She knew that with hard work, determination, and the support of her family and mentors, she could achieve anything she set her mind to. As she stood on the court, ready for another day of training, she thought of Jake and all they had overcome together. Their story was one of redemption, resilience, and the enduring power of mentorship. And with every swing of the racket, Ada felt a deep sense of gratitude for the path she had taken and the bright future that awaited her. Several months had passed since Ada moved to the prestigious tennis academy. Her days were filled with rigorous training, challenging matches, and relentless self-improvement. Each step forward felt like a tribute to the journey she and Jake had undertaken together. One sunny afternoon, as Ada practiced her serves, she received a message from Jake. "Check the news," it read, accompanied by a link. Curious, Ada clicked on it and was greeted by a heartwarming article about Jake's newly reopened tennis academy in Atlanta. The piece highlighted his dedication to nurturing young talent and his remarkable story of redemption, thanks in no small part to Ada's unwavering belief in him. Ada felt a swell of pride. Jake's academy was flourishing, and many young players were getting the opportunity to train under his expert guidance. She knew that some of those kids would go on to achieve great things, just like she was aiming to do. Later that evening, Ada sat by her dorm window, looking out at the academy grounds. She thought about all the people who had supported her along the way, her parents, her friends, Mr. Thompson, Officer Williams, and, most importantly, Jake. They had all played a part in her journey, helping her become the person she was today. As she reflected on her past, she couldn't help but think about the future. There were still many challenges to face, many matches to win, and many dreams to chase. But Ada felt ready. She had the skills, the determination, and the support she needed to succeed. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a video call from her parents. Their familiar faces filled the screen, beaming with pride and love. They talked about her training, the new friends she had made, and how much they missed her at home. Ada assured them she was doing well and promised to visit soon. After the call, Ada lay back on her bed, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was excited about the path ahead. With every challenge, she grew stronger, and with every success, she felt a step closer to her dreams. The next morning, as Ada stepped onto the court for another day of practice, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was not just playing for herself, she was playing for everyone who had believed in her and for the dreams that she and Jake had built together. With a determined smile, Ada prepared to serve, ready to face whatever came next with the same resilience and heart that had brought her this far. Her story was just beginning, and she was eager to see where it would lead.